Thank you very much, Sicho. This is a very timely topic. It comes in the time where the Ghana Football Association have secured a headline sponsor, and it's a betting company, and so we'll be getting more perspective from that point of view. It's a pleasure to have you. Let me start with you, Henry, and there's no better place to start than the recent deal with BetPower. We all know the amount of money that betting companies do have, and so there's that potential they can always give back to the sporting community in terms of investment. But from where you sit, do you think that betting companies and clubs and the association can coexist harmoniously?
Well, thank you very much. Greetings to everyone. I would like to thank and first of all commend the organizers for putting this program together. It's been an eye-opener. Those of us who have been here for the past 4 or 5 hours have picked loads of lessons from the various topics that have been discussed thus far. So commendations to the organizers for putting this together. Now to your question, I think that we've gotten to a point where, like you indicated, we cannot do much about betting companies permeating into the sporting fraternity. Clearly what it says is that a lot of people follow the sport, not only football, but sports in general has huge following. And that relationship between betting companies and the various sporting disciplines, associations, football clubs, what have you, we have to harness on that potential and leverage on it and build on external benefits that they bring on board. So yes, we also need to look at the direct impact on the main actors of the game. Here I'm talking about the players, not forgetting referees, not forgetting people who are direct service providers to the sport, education that needs to be given to them. And I must say that the integrity office of the FA in recent years have been taking referees through integrity training, just to give them lessons on what is allowed and what is not allowed. And so I am glad to mention on this panel that just last week it was published on the FA website that some referees are going to have been charged for engaging in betting, because before the start of the season we took them through all the needs, the do's and don'ts. They understood, the risk in going into betting, and so if you are found culpable, you will be punished. We do same for the players. We have several engagements with the players. We do that with the clubs. We take them through series of education as well. And so, yes, you look at it from, the direct consumer's point of view, those on the street, football fans, and they are allowed to do so. But as players, what sort of education do they need in order not to involve themselves in such acts? And that is what we have been doing, for the past 2.5 seasons. It has not been easy taking people through such education, procedural processes. But I am sure that with loads of hard work, continuous improvement, continuous education, it will get better as we go along.
I still want to stay on this topic with you, Henry. It's a sensitive one, and essentially from the FA's point of view, because if you look at this partnership, right? For instance, BetPower make more money when more people bet, and that money, if they make more money, they sponsor the league like the Ghana Premier League. And so from the FA's point of view, right, is it something that you're looking at and saying, because I remember a couple of seasons ago, the FA wasn't too comfortable with people betting on the Ghana Premier League. In fact, you wanted the betting providers to come and get some form of permission. And so there would also come to a point where you have to look at the league and you protecting the brand. And Ghana has had a reputation, integrity and all. Ghana has had a reputation, even recently, with match manipulation. When you're going into such a deal, I just wanted to find out your posture and some of the thinking processes that went through before you accepted this bet power deal? I know it wasn't straightforward and it took a lot of time.
Well, there are legal implications, there are legal considerations. First of all, we referred betting sites who had used Ghana Premier League matches in the past on their platforms without, prior notice or without, recourse to the Football Association, because we know that it is illegal to list our matches on such platforms without permission from the Football Association. So all those platforms, we have evidence, the issues have been referred to the legal department to take over. So yes, how did we go into this deal with Bet Power? Yes, initially it was tough. It was tough because at the time we had this Ashanti Gold Inter-Allies issue still locked at the disciplinary committee of the FA. A lot of people were shouting out there that when is the verdict coming out? When is the verdict coming out? So we needed to be careful. But if you study the report of the disciplinary committee, you would realize that a lot of work went into trying to, decode whatever transpired before the match. And so club officials who spoke, and that was purely match fixing and not betting. At that instance, everyone who was involved in the act took a decision to fix the match. So there is a difference between match fixing and betting. Betting is open for all, free for all. You can just say this team will beat that team with a certain score line and you are free to bet. But when the main actors, club owners, footballers, administrators, team managers now come together to fix a match, then there is an issue. So we needed to take time to look at all the issues that may come up. Like, what do we stand to lose? Does it affect the integrity of the game? If it is going to affect the integrity of the game, by and large, what factors can we put in place to protect the integrity and the sanctity of the game, especially because series of incidents have happened in the past. Now, so all these guiding principles went into the negotiation. Now, in the end, you also need to look at what the sponsor stands to gain. They cannot just invest $6 million into your product and not get anything in return. So you also need to consider what they will get in return. Now, it's a win-win situation. I want to protect my product from any bad PR whatsoever. The sponsor is also looking for an avenue to make money because I want to recoup how much I am investing in the product. So in the end, we arrived at a common ground. The sponsor knows what they can do and what they cannot do at this moment. The FA also understands what our priorities are and where we can, move and where we cannot move. And then we reached a common ground, and the negotiation went on. Monies were discussed, and eventually we were able to sign a deal, as an FA, one entity, and then the betting company as the other entity.
Well, thank you, Henry. I'll come back to you, but it's a good time to bring in Mohamed. I want to find out your thoughts. We've heard from Henry, and you can tell that there is a division of opinion whenever betting tries to enter the football space, especially in the form of sponsorship. Where do you sit on the fence, and how do you interpret or view betting companies trying to sponsor clubs, for instance, leagues, and any other products concerning sports?
Okay, first of all, I want to thank you guys for Prince, especially for organizing this amazing summit. And I agree with Mark. It's for me impressive what we've seen in Accra, and the ecosystem of the sport and what you guys are doing is amazing. I really like it. Let me first say I'm not endorsing betting, but let's talk about it from a business point of view and business perspective. There's two sides for this business encounter: the clubs, federations, who needs money to run their business, to pay their bills for the players, and to enrich their products. And there's the betting companies which I think are taking advantage until this moment from everybody else, from the stakeholders of the sports industry. Because the amount of money made in bidding, it's in 2019, betting companies or business was 234 billion US dollars. It's expected to be in 2024 to reach almost $350 billion. When we talk about the sports industry, it's $500 billion, which is almost the bidding is 2/3 of the sports industry. Then we can say, okay guys, you're ripping us off. More money should be poured in the sports industry. Why is that? Tell me about if anybody in the advertisement industry, how much you pay for a 30-second, 1-minute ad on TV. How much money you pay for that? Imagine that you have 90 minutes of football, no interruptions. You have your logo on the t-shirt, on the field, and everybody is watching. That's not it. Football is an emotional. When you go back home, you buy your t-shirt of your favorite team, you have that logo. That shirt, some of us have shirts since they were kids. They're still put it on their walls because they love that player, love that team, and that's how much money you can pay for that. Enormous, right? That's why bidding companies are now sponsoring, because it's cheaper than doing ads. If they go and spend that on a digital, on Google, on Facebook, on TV, that will be more money than the peanuts they're giving to the federation, to the clubs. The most important, what the club should do with this money is spend it wisely, spend it on infrastructure, spend it on their players to have a better product, so that you can get more money and juice them out. Whether you like it or not, betting is done, you accept it or not. And if the Ghana Federation stopped agreeing for this deal and do not do the acceptance of being sponsored, still these companies will allow the bidding to happen outside. Egypt, for where I come from, 100 million Egyptian pounds were being spent on bidding. None of them went inside Egypt, outside Egypt. So whether you like it or not, it will keep existing. The thing is, let's make use of that money for a better good. So also, if you look historically, alcohol companies and tobacco companies were sponsoring football clubs, but then they were banned. And right now there's talks in Europe. La Liga is banning some of the clubs from gambling. The increase in gambling is affecting the youth, especially the ages from 18 to 25. These are coming highly on bidding. And that's something we should be aware that money is for a short period. It's not going to last for long. Until European government will realize that it's affecting the community, and that might be stopped to allow sponsorship from bidding companies into sport. And you have spoken about integrity, and that's another one thing that can ruin the industry of sports in general, and football particularly, because with match fixing, you're no more enjoying the game. Right now, if the money players or coaches or referees can make from a betting company or a fixer more than he gets from the business himself, he's doing, that can jeopardize the game to go into a dark area that we don't want that happen.
I would like to stay with you, Mohamed. You touched on a very crucial point that has to do with integrity. Now, it's not just in Spain. You look at the English Premier League, and over half of the teams have some affiliations with betting companies, most of them with the sponsorship on their ties. Now, there's also talks that have begun on banning, putting betting companies on your shirt and all that. So as you rightly mentioned, it's a matter of time. But at what point do we realize globally as an industry that yes, betting has its adverse effect and maybe we have to let it go, or there are ways in which betting and football can coexist without possibly harming the target group that you mentioned from 18 to 25? Where do you sit? Do you think they can coexist without affecting them, or you think there will come a point where we just have to let go?
It depends on the ecosystem. If the ecosystem is educating players, educating coaches, spending money on that, and they realize that product is the most important, not the money they're making, that could enable the coexisting between the betting and sport. If that doesn't happen, and the money poured into betting is more than money being taken from football for these players and coaches and referees, then this is where it can be banned.
Okay. Let me come back to you, Henry. Just from a business point of view, has there been, or do you anticipate any form of conflict of interest, for instance, from other betting companies that are sponsoring teams in the league? Just a bit of education for us here. Let's say team XYZ have a different sponsorship with another betting company. Does the FA now choosing another betting company as the headline sponsor affect that in any way?
Well, thank you, Owuraku. Just to add to the point that Mohamed raised earlier about using the money wisely and being wise about how we use the revenue that comes from sponsorships like this. It is for that reason that we decided to spend part of that money to get at least a pitch, for that matter, so to develop an infrastructure which will serve as something monumental from the sponsorship deal with Bet Power. Now, coming to your question, I think there are different lines of engagement. At the end of the day, these clubs need to be run on their own, so they also have the right to seek sponsorship from the corporate world. So as far as we are concerned, yes, there are certain clubs who already have betting companies as sponsors. The terms of engagement are different. The relationship between clubs and their sponsors is totally different from the relationship between the federation and the headline sponsor. So yes, the headline sponsor know where their line of or channel of engagement are. So they know they have access to pitch panels, they know they have access to every FA related event, they know they have the mention when it comes to the product, the Ghana Premier League. So all these things have been discussed. It will not have anything whatsoever in terms of interfering with what the clubs already have, because at the end of the day, once you begin to tell the clubs what to accept and what not to accept, it also affects the ecosystem and the industry. Because when your clubs are financially viable, it also helps, to a large extent, it helps the product. You are more enhanced. The clubs are able to thrive on their own. They are able to pay players well, and it inures to the benefit of the federation as well. So there is no form of conflict of interest whatsoever. Bet Power, which is our headline sponsor, they know which areas are available to them in terms of mileage, and so it has nothing to do with the clubs at all. I also know that some of the clubs have started announcing, betting companies as sponsors, and there will be a lot more in the coming days. So we are very much aware of some of these things, and we will work hand in hand and also do things harmoniously.
I also want to stick with you on the case of survival. Now, football, as we know, on the pitch, there's always a domino effect. Another decision affects one on the pitch. But off the pitch as well, it's equally observed, as you can see in this situation. So let's take the context where we have a league in Ghana where we admit that, yes, it's growing, but at the moment, there isn't a lot of money, especially for most of the clubs. And so player salaries is an issue. And we can confidently say that a player who receives close to little or no salary is more open or viable to match manipulation than a player who is more comfortable financially. Now, other federations in Africa, from my knowledge, like Cameroon, are discussing the possibility of a minimum wage, at least to ensure that players are in a comfortable range that they can take care of and take care of themselves financially. Are the Ghana Football Association thinking of anything similar? I mean, just to help contain players, especially with the influx of betting all over?
Thank you. Two things came up in the last meeting of the Executive Council on June 28. They discussed introducing a standard contract. We were just talking at the back. I still don't understand why a player's contract should end in the middle of the season. And it happens in Ghana. This morning I heard a player of one of the clubs will be free to leave in the next 2 months. And the new season begins in September. But that player is free to leave in November, 2 months into the new season. Clearly, things are not done, properly. So the issue of introducing a standard contract with a start date and an end date across board will soon be introduced, so that players don't leave in the middle of the season when their teams or their clubs are fighting for the title or fighting for survival, whichever way they find themselves, and also looking at opportunity of winning the league to go to Africa. So aside the standard contract that the Executive Council is seeking to introduce, they also discussed the possibility of introducing a minimum wage, not only in the Premier League, but in all our 3 top-tier competitions. I am talking about the Premier League, the the Premier League, the Division 1 League, and then the Women's Premier League. These are our 3 top-tier, domestic competitions. So they discussed the idea of having a minimum wage for the Premier League, 1 for the Division 1, and then 1 for the Women's Premier League. So meetings have been held with the Professional Footballers Association of Ghana to first of all, discuss the idea with them, to also seek their input. I think the initial meeting went very well. In the coming days, the FA will also meet the various clubs to discuss these possibilities with them. We want to be at the same page. We do not want to, impose anything like a draconian law on these clubs. We need to reach a compromise. They know where their responsibilities are, and the FA will guide them to go through that process. So yes, we are the initial stages or discussion stages. It will come into fruition in the not too distant future. In discussing the sponsorship with Bet Power, player welfare was key on the agenda. How do we motivate these players to go out there and fight for the title, and to go out there and not to play any match of convenience? So player welfare was very, very, crucial during the discussion stages, because you cannot go into a deal, get a sponsor to sponsor your product, and the key actors do not feature, because the key actors would either make your product good or bad. So an innovation that was introduced, which is attached to this sponsorship deal, is that the sponsor would introduce something that we call the locker room bonus. The locker room bonus is part of the sponsorship deal that we have with the headline sponsor. The locker room bonus is here to motivate players to go all out and fight for the points on the pitch. Because immediately when you win the game, you do not have to wait for 2-3 months to get your winning bonus. Yes, we know that all these clubs that play in the Premier League have their winning bonus structure, salary structure, and what have you. But the locker room bonus is here to, as an added incentive. So immediately after the match, maybe Mohamed 11 versus Hat 11, the players go into the game with a mindset that I am going to win. And once I win, in 2 hours, my bonus, I'll receive it on my phone. So you don't go into the match thinking about, when at all are they going to pay my winning bonus? This time, finish the game in 90 minutes, and within an hour or 2, you have your winning bonus on your phone. Just to motivate these players to fight and not to go there to play games, or match of convenience, or games that have already been influenced or manipulated by match fixers and other external factors. So that has been introduced. Very soon we will break communication on that. The clubs, the players, all registered players for the 18 Premier League clubs will be on that platform. We will know players who will be in the match day squad. As soon as we know the match day squad, we will be on standby. And once the games are over, players will receive their bonuses instantly. Just to, also help in that player welfare drive to improve things.
Equal share of bonus? Equal share of bonus, so if the team wins, all the players get the same amount of money?
Yes, equal sharing, yes. Yeah.
That's brilliant. But let me come to you, Thank you. Let me come to you, Mohamed. You deal with a lot of data. And let me just push you to the wall with this one. Do you think any sport in Africa can survive financially without betting, like companies providing sponsorship?
Actually, yes. It's all about marketing. Whatever you do, you never get sponsors just by sitting in office and wait for people to come to you. You should go, pitch them, sell your product. So they come because you have a good product. You didn't think they come because of a betting only. If the Ghana Premier League hasn't done much of a development on the product the last couple of years, I've been close to trying to understand what's going on. Last year we had an agreement of airing the games with start time. That was the key cornerstone of getting sponsorship. Without it being seen, nobody will be interested in your product. So putting your product on screen is the first. Whatever the game is, if it's curling in Europe, they bet on that because on the screen. I don't think anybody in Africa would be interested in watching such a sport. But it's on screen that gets it sponsors. The same with every sport. It's volleyball, handball, basketball, swimming, running, whatever it is. If you have the right marketing and the right product, people will come to you. So I think, yes, everybody can survive without a bidding, and let's think about the bidding as like any other sponsors. They're coming because they're an interest in that product, and that product is good.
Well, still on you, Mohamed. I'm going to ask you a much tougher question. We listened to Mark's presentation where he looked at the predictive side of data and how artificial intelligence is only going to get smarter over the years in terms of making predictions. Now, here's the situation where we're seeing an intersection of predictive data and sports betting. And so, long term, when artificial intelligence gets smarter and gets much closer to a truer prediction, what do you think that would mean for betting companies? Because now people would be getting a lot more right than wrong.
Okay. Let me tell you, prediction works well for the long term. For example, if there's a game going on to be between Man City and West Ham, the odds would be to Man City over West Ham. But if we're predicting who will win the league, I can guarantee it's not West Ham, it's probably Man City versus someone else. So prediction works well. Mark can correct me here. Prediction works well on the long term, not just on the spot. Bidding is all about excitement. Now we want the rush, the adrenaline. Who's gonna get the next corner? Who's gonna get the next penalty? It's not the lottery like before. Who's gonna win? Now bidding is more sophisticated, and it's about lots of things within the game. So who's gonna get the kickoff? Nothing can predict that. Who's gonna get the first corner in the game? Even if a big team playing against a no-voice team, you cannot predict that. So prediction doesn't work in that way, and usually if you're using for sports reasons, it's on long term. I want to see how my team gonna perform in the next 10 games. That prediction can tell you about.
So what then is the relationship between data companies and then betting? Because we're seeing a lot more of that recently.
Of course, the betting companies want to set the odds right. And with data, they can set the odds right. And because, I don't know if you remember Matthew Benham, the founder of Brentford and Michelin. That guy made a fortune just by manipulating betting companies because of the XG model he developed. So he was able to do the prediction based on beating the odds of the betting companies. So now the betting company is looking for how to make our odds as accurate as possible, so that no one can have better odds and beat up the companies.
Okay, that definitely makes sense. But let's move away from the prediction. I want to come back to you, Henry, and ask you what role these betting companies have to play. Because definitely what they're doing is not enough, because there are people even in SHS who are placing bets. And so from where I sit, the barriers are not strong enough in terms of, well, you just have to put in whether you're 18 or not. No one really cares about whether you're truly 18. There's no form of authenticity check or anything of that sort. And so what role do you think these betting companies can play in terms of ensuring that even if people are betting, they are betting right, and there isn't a form of addiction?
Addiction is everywhere, depending on where you sit and what you normally consume. So betting is a product that is being consumed. So it has a certain group of people, or it has its own market. Mohamed spoke about what used to be the case in the past when alcoholic beverages were all over the place, sponsoring all the major sporting disciplines. Even as we speak, it still happens. In most of those European competitions, we still have, alcoholic beverages having an association one way or the other with the products. We have some cigarette companies as well who are out there who do a lot of sponsorship. I don't know. In recent times, the telcos have taken a back seat. They are not too visible as they were in the past. I think that depending on where you are, depending on where you sit, I cannot talk about the UK because that's not where I live. I can only talk about Ghana, but I'm sure as a nation we need to look at it. Yes, there is an authority responsible to make sure that these betting companies go through the right channel of engagement. They go through a certain checklist before they are approved to go onto the market. But that is not enough, honestly. There are young boys and girls who are below 18 who are into betting. Is it because the security, or is it because certain channels are not in place? Is it because the system is loose? Is it because the system is weak? Is it because certain things that need to be done is not being done? Because the Gaming Commission would only come out with a publication that is not meant for children below 18, and it ends there. We need to go beyond that and make sure the right things are done. Children below 18 who have mobile phones. Today, children as young as 10, 8, 7 have mobile phones. They do things on the phone that you and I cannot even do. So we need to look at all these things. How do they get the first point of entry? Because you register with your phone, and if you are not 18, how are we able to tell whether you are 18 or not? But if it is just about picking my Android phone and going onto the internet, logging on and registering, it's not, it's not, the security parameters are not strong enough. It's not stringent enough. So maybe that is what we need to look at as a nation. But honestly speaking, betting companies are here to stay. A lot more are springing up day in and day out. You have no idea where investors are or what investors are thinking around this time. They are thinking along setting up betting companies because they know it is lucrative. If in 2019 over $3 billion was realized by betting companies, it means in 2021 we are likely to have times 2 or times 3.
Yes.
So it's a lucrative business venture, and people are now channeling their energy into that area. So once it is here to stay, we also need to look at the other areas which can be detrimental and negative on our lives, on the lives of our children, on our kids, and so forth and so on. So that is my opinion as regards what must be done in order to curb some of those loopholes in the system.
And just to wrap up with you, Henry, I would want to end on the note of morality versus results. Now, even in where I work, there's always the question of why don't you cover Ghana Premier League as much as the European content? And at the end of the day, you're thinking as a company, what sells? What do your consumers really want? And so you always want to give space to morality and what is right and what you believe should be done. But there's also that room for results, money, reward, compensation. Do you foresee a time coming? You say betting companies are here to stay. Do you foresee a time coming where different industries, sports, entertainment, the arts industry would have to be engaged together on how to move forward. I'm saying this because we recently had a law in Ghana that says that celebrities can no longer advertise for betting companies. So if you're saying celebrities cannot endorse it, but the Ghana Premier League can, then what message are we really preaching? It doesn't look like we're on the same board. So are you looking forward to such an engagement where the whole country will be able to say, this is where we stand with betting, regardless of our industry, and this is how we'll go forward?
Well, first of all, we need to look at our national regulations. What does the law say? If there are national regulations, exactly where does it sit in the society? Issues about morality is a bit slippery. I mean, it's a slippery area. I hardly discuss moral issues, but yes, you spoke about results as well. And so you sit in your newsroom and you are torn between pushing a Ghana Premier League product at the expense of other products. I want to believe that in recent times, we have not been lucky. On the back of what we witnessed in 2018, it kind of gave us a certain dent. The product suffered bad image. We've been trying very, very hard to erase that impression from the minds of Ghanaians and from the minds of consumers, both direct and indirect consumers, but it will not be easy. It will take a lot of hard work. In the last 2.5 seasons, we've done a lot. We've gone on different educational drives. We've educated the public. We've spoken to the direct consumers. We've spoken to the main actors. There have been mechanisms where we are punishing referees. Now some players are also suffering. Some players, were banned until yesterday when CAS decided to give them a certain, leeway, interim leeway for them to continue their career. So a lot of engagements need to go on. That engagement will not start today and end tomorrow. That engagement, I'm sure, began years ago, and it will go on and on and on and on. There is no end point, because today we have a certain generation of people, coming up. In the next 10 years, we'll have another generation. And so that education drive shouldn't end. We need to go on and engage, people as much as possible. Let's open up and speak to the issue. Let's open up and deal directly, with those concerned. And for me, if we are able to put those mechanisms in place and work on our national regulations, know what can be done at what point and what cannot be done at what point, we will be able to deal with this issue. But if we leave the system as open as it is now, then we stand to lose a lot.
All right, thank you very much, Henry. Just to take your closing thoughts, Mohamed, the only hindrance to sports and betting not coexisting peacefully as things stand is match manipulation. You've had the privilege of working in a space with data and information and numbers. Do you think there is a future with artificial intelligence that you would be able to detect match fixing quickly to be able to help eradicate it from our game?
It exists right now. Sports Radar has one of the best systems to detect fraud, and they report these frauds. But the problem is, not every report takes serious actions for banning the players or the ref or whoever involved in that. More investigation takes place, and that usually might be the problem more than detecting the fraud itself. So yes, data helps a lot in that detection, and the more you have of your the league being covered with data helps that a lot. One thing I want to add to what Harry was saying is it's an opportunity, since you have a betting sponsors. The games will be watched outside the region for the betting reasons, but this is also a privilege, because if the people watching got attached to what the product is, you might have an opportunity to start getting other sponsors from outside your region, and that's an opportunity from the betting. It opened the door that you can get other money from someone else, not from the betting itself.
All right, thank you very much, Mohamed and Henry, and that brings an end to our discussion on the best relationship between sports and betting.
What a complex subject. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Henry and Mohamed. Just a second. And I understand while I was sitting there that there might be just a question or two for you, gentlemen. So in the next minute and a half, please, if you have a question, please raise up your hand. I think there's a microphone going around. All right, this one came up first. So, all right, so that will be the second one. Please introduce yourself and then you ask your question. And to who?
My name is Nana Prempe from XYZ Broadcasting Limited. Any of the two gentlemen can respond to the question. Now we are talking business. And I see brand depreciation when it comes to our football. I'm happy my brother said he's still a journalist, so he knows what I'm talking about. If my memory serves me right, we had Globacom Premier League, and they were paying, I think, $3 million a season. Then came First Class Capital, $2 million for a season. We had Xylophone Cash Premier League, $2 million, and there's still $2 million for a season. I don't know what actually went into the discussion before signing the deal. Henry, do you see our brand depreciation or appreciation?
All right, so I think that question goes for Mr. Henry Asante. I'll take the second and last question, I think. All right. Hassan Chipsa, the ex-Kotoko player, now a football agent, also has a question. So, Henry, please note that one down. Brand depreciation, do you think?
Thank you very much. My question goes to Henry also.
Well, you're a busy man today.
I would like to say good job with the locker room bonus initiative. But I think the major challenge that we have so far as player welfare is concerned is the payment of salaries. I think we need to find a way to guarantee the payment of salaries of players, and that is the only way we can make the players happy. You know, when their salaries are on time, we wouldn't have much of the problems that we have. We at the PFA gym, we used to resolve a lot of dispute cases, and majority of them are from non-payment of salaries. So I would suggest that instead of, I don't know how much you are discussing for the minimum wage rate, but going forward, just have this at the back of your mind. If an amount is agreed on in relation to the minimum wage rate, instead of the locker room bonus, I would rather suggest that we guarantee the payment of salaries and taking into consideration the minimum wage rate, so that the minimum wage rate set or agreed by all stakeholders should be paid from the FA out of sponsorship monies. Then, if there should be any balance, I don't know, like we have 6 million now for 3 years, that is 2 million for 3 years. For example, if we have a minimum wage rate of 100 cedis, each club is expected to sign maximum of 30 players. So, this 100 cedis by 30 by 12 for a year, then this amount is locked up at the FA, in accounts at the FA, and that payment goes at the end of every month to the players. So that a player who has more than 100 cedis, that should be complemented by his club. In this way, the player is aware that at the end of every month, the minimum wage agreed is guaranteed. It will come. What we've been experiencing is these sponsorship monies are shared to the clubs, and at the end of the day, they still don't pay the players. Some club owners will acquire properties, personal properties, whilst players are not being paid. So please, this is just a chip in. I don't know what factors you took into consideration before arriving at the locker room bonus initiative. But next time, or if it is still possible, let's guarantee the payment of salaries, at least the minimum bar from the FA, so that we know that at the end of the month, the player is receiving an amount of money that is not going to fail. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that was a blend of a suggestion, a big one, and perhaps a question of either if it was considered in that regard.
Well, thank you very much, Chipsa. I think in having such conversations with a sponsor, a potential sponsor, the sponsor, first of all, has a certain needs that must be met. And then you, the company or the federation, you also want to pay particular attention to certain things. So all these issues came up, but in the end, we decided to begin with a bonus, at least for now. It is a fact that issues of non-payment of salaries and other player welfare, misunderstanding between players and clubs and all that is actually on the rise, because the player status committee keeps having complaints from players, PFAG, non-payment of salaries almost every season. And you should be at the FA this afternoon. You have loads of players there who are going for protest and other player welfare related cases. So such litigations are on a rise. So it's good you have brought it up, and I am glad that we've also taken a decision to meet the PFAG, the parent body responsible for player welfare in Ghana. The initial discussions, like I mentioned earlier, looked very positive. We will continue to engage PFAG together with the clubs, because most of these players see the PFAG as their welfare body. They go to them when they are in such distress. So your suggestion is well noted. We will take it up. I'm sure when the president and the general secretary returns, I will inform them, and it will be considered hopefully in future. The issue about depreciation of brand, I think that we have not been the same for some time now. I mean, fact is, we've been through a lot in the last 4 or 5 years. But you should ask yourself what happened to the relationship with Globacom. It did not end, ended abruptly. You should ask yourself what happened to the relationship with First Capital Plus Bank. It also ended halfway through the journey. Same happened to the recent one, the one with Xylophone Cash. It ended about 3 months or 4 months into the journey. We also needed to take into consideration due diligence, and in arriving at this decision, we did a lot of due diligence. We went into the company profile, dug into the background of this company. We wanted to know more about the company because of our previous experiences with the 3 companies that I mentioned earlier, and this took a while. In the end, we agreed to enter into an initial partnership. I can tell you for a fact that this is an initial partnership. We wanted to enter into an initial partnership for 3 years worth $6 million. Our due diligence process is still ongoing. We are still looking around. We are still seeking or asking more questions. It does not mean that the brand has depreciated. What it means is that we didn't do things right in the past, and it has come back to haunt us. But going forward, some of these measures that have been put in place is what would guide us as we go along. And don't be surprised that after the first or initial 3 years, we could go or move to, a higher fee, depending on how we conduct ourselves and how happy the sponsor would also be at the end of the initial period.
Thank you very much, Mr. Henry Asante. Thank you very much, Mohamed.